Item 7, Superintendent's Report, and the first item is High School Schedule Implementation Update. And I see Dr. Bales. Welcome again.
Good to see y'all.
Yeah.
So actually, I brought a lot of my colleagues with me today. The last few times that we've had updates, it's been a lot of us sharing out from the district perspective some of the things that we're doing, but I wanted to make sure that our community realized the efforts that each of our schools have put in over the last year plus. So, no worries. No worries. So over the past couple of months, we've been continuing as we move through our professional development. We've been able to have rolling professional developments at each of our high schools around our AVID implementation, best practices in some of our small groups, elevation, working with our ML students and being able to figure out grouping with that as well. We were also able to take about 3 to 6 staff members from each of our high schools to a neighboring high school who implemented a flex in the last couple of years. They were able to see that action, build some partnerships, see what their schedule looks like, and get some ideas in terms of what we can explore that in the upcoming year. We had a day where we came together, all of our high schools, to discuss our cross-enrollment and figuring out ways to actually do that. In years past, it's been a little bit further down the line, but we were able to do that in one of our teacher work days, get everybody together and really talk about what we want to put in place for this year to align our schedules, and then looking in future years as we move forward. Lots of collaboration back and forth, especially these last couple of weeks as our schedules have been, master schedules have been built. Lots of questions, different ways to collaborate. We've had lots of Google Meets and conversations just as principals. And one of the pieces that we were able to do was, when we talk about that cross-school collaboration, is our AP Latin class. We were able to make sure that that's taught at the same period to ensure that we have that available for students to all take in person and not have to navigate. So we're going to be doing that next year at East Chapel Hill High School, and our students from Chapel Hill High School have the opportunity to either drive over there or Zoom into the class. Just one of the ways that we had talked about what we're going to be doing in future years. So I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Sullivan, who's going to talk us through his professional development, and then Mr. Casey, and then you'll see me again.
Thank you, Dr. Bales. I don't know how to use this, but kind of fancy for me. Oh, there we go. I'm going to go backwards to go forwards. One of the things that for the past 3 years, we have had we're on our final year of a 3-year professional development plan. And if you kind of look at the things over the past 3 years, we've already talked about a lot of these tonight. Kate and Nick had mentioned about MTSS and AVID and Wicker. So 2 years ago, our focus as a school was PLCs, professional learning communities. This last year, it was MTSS, and this year we've been focusing on AVID and Wicker strategies. And our instructional coaches, Ms. Duncan and Ms. Dickerson, have done a wonderful job of infusing the strategies that we use with AVID and showing how these strategies equate to good strategies to be used in block scheduling. So we spent a lot of time with that this year, and we were focusing on the Wicker, which is the writing, inquiry, collaboration, organization, and reading part of the AVID. So what we've done this year is those large group PDs, and Dr. Bales and Dr. Stanley had just put together this year some student-centered coaching for us, and the principals got to take place in that. And one of the things that we learned yesterday was once you get those large groups in, now you can start focusing on that small group professional learning and individualized professional learning. So our goal next year is to have a focus on all 3 of these, PLCs, MTSS, and AVID and Wicker, as we move forward into that block scheduling piece, but focus it more on the needs of the teachers as far as what particular area do they need specific professional development, and instead of us just blasting the same thing to everybody, let's focus on those individual groups. Do they need help with Socratic seminars? Do they need help with writing with purpose, organizational notebooks, whatever it needs to be, but going back through what we've learned and studied over the past 3 years and getting to that very deeply and individualized. We talk about individualized instruction for students. What we're hoping to do is get that individualized instruction for our teachers to help them be successful in block scheduling by using these best strategies across the board. So that's our goal. And Dr. Griffin, you mentioned something earlier about the number of strategies that was in Kate's proposal, and what the DPI requires is just tons and tons of strategies. A couple of months ago, Dr. Bales brought to our attention that we were going to focus on the big rocks, PLCs, multi-tiered systems of support, and AVID moving forward next year. So I really like where we are, focusing on those three main topics that we've really been working on the past 3 years as we transition to block scheduling, and not having 20 or 30 different projects that we're trying to implement as we're making this change. So I think we're in a good place. The direction that I see has kind of brought us to, I think we're moving forward, and we're excited for what's going to happen next year. Any questions?
Questions for Dr. Sullivan? There might be later, if you can stick around.
All right, I'll be here. I'm going to give this to Mr. Casey, see if he can work it better than I can.
You figured it out, I can. There we go. Good evening, board. It's an honor to talk to you a little about what we did. I put together just some glows and grows from our opportunity to run the block schedule. My first slide kind of shows how we use the block schedule. I just wanted to show this to give you some reference, that it wasn't an exact orange to orange running of the schedule, because we had to modify our 7-period day to what will be 8 classes next year. But we did, the whole idea was to give teachers an opportunity to get a feel for teaching to the block, teaching to the 80 minutes. That was the most important thing, not so much of the schedule itself and where things are, but really getting an understanding, a feel for what it's like to teach to 80 minutes and the flow of the day of just 4 classes and that flex in between 3rd and 4th. So if you look at our schedule, you just see we had some creative things we had to do with that 8th period. And so that's where you'll see some things. We did a digital wellness during the digital wellness week. That was the countywide thing. That was really good. And then we had a less stress fest that Thursday, which was good because it actually provided students with activities that they could do during flex next year, when we might have a wellness type Wednesday, or put some things in where they can choose certain less stress or social emotional type activities that they could choose from. So some of the glows that worked well, I did take this information. I was able to poll teachers and students during that time where I was walking around, going into classrooms, just seeing how things were going, seeing how things went in the moment, but I also surveyed teachers. I also was able to speak to students directly, and I also had an opportunity to bring together our equity advisors team that every high school has. I was able to bring them together and talk to them, since they're a good, microcosm of our school, and this is where I got some of my data from. So instructional benefits, the longer periods supported full lesson delivery. I had a couple of students tell me that, specifically like science classes, that they were able to do a lab that they would never have been able to do because of the chemicals and how the lab works. You can't do it in multiple days. You can only do it in one day. And it was an engaging lab that they really liked. So that was kind of the feedback, that they felt like teachers were able to take a little more time in what they were teaching, and they didn't feel like teachers were rushed. And so that was some of the parts of the glows. Definitely varied activities to hit multi different types of learners. And they liked the fewer transitions because they could focus more. Focusing on students again, they reported less stress. They liked the fewer classes. They felt like, especially in language immersion courses in English, there was more engagement. And students definitely, as I go back, enjoyed flex every day. Teachers felt like they felt a little more confident because they had more time to teach. The flex time between blocks helped reset or help with reset or intervention. So they liked being able to see kids every day for intervention type purposes, and definitely fewer preps. So they felt like they could focus, kind of like the students did. They felt like they could focus and be more intentional to less preps, daily preps. Some of the grows, long blocks do require varied and more interactive strategies. In some ways, you can see that as a good thing. They were a little concerned about disengagement, lecture-heavy formats, which we know we want to try to get away from. But if a class does lean itself to that, they saw some of those as challenges. And then fatigue, without as many movement or breaks. The flex time structure, some of the grows, as there was some mixed staff feedback. They do find it valuable for intervention and reflection, but the frequency created shorter duration. Like at East, we have one day for an hour, which gives the opportunity to make up a test or a longer project. But with every day, we'd have to shorten it. So that was some grows there. And then, of course, attendance and absenteeism. When you miss a class, it's missing more than you would in a standard year. So they found that students that missed a day or two during that week, they had to do a little more to bring those students back up. But some general summaries, it was good to see, especially from kids, that there was an enthusiasm. I saw some kids who kind of talked about how they thought they might not like it, but actually they did, and they enjoyed the 80 minutes. And we need to make sure we address concerns from both staff and students to ensure equity, engagement, and effectiveness, and just continue collaborating with our teachers as they feel challenged, that we provide the support that they need. All right. Any questions?
Mr. Casey, a couple days after you did this, I wasn't aware you had done this, but I was in a committee meeting with a room full of adults and a student from East. And he's a permanent member of the committee, and he always reports in on, there's a couple students on the group. And the committee's talked over and on about the block. And when it got his turn to talk, he started talking about the block day at East. And he was so positive and so effusive in his praise, and so that the rest of the room just started actually paying attention, in a way that we've talked about the block in this room before, and people are kind of just doing whatever they're doing. So I just passed that on to you because he was a better ambassador than any of us adults had been.
The students always are.
And I applaud you for doing that with the kids.
Yeah.
Because I've heard since from some other kids that they really liked the day. And I've also heard from your students who went to other events we've sponsored, and they didn't like it at all. And they're not afraid to tell you that.
Right. But I think the best feedback was during my time with the equity group, and just in asking the questions, they were engaged in wanting to talk about it, and just seeing the couple of the students who just were like, it wasn't what I thought it was better. And so it was good to see that, and I think that I know there's been a lot of challenges with this, but I think just the change, and we talk about change a lot, is forcing us to do some things differently in a better way, and I think the students are at least buying in, and I think the teachers are too. Thank you.
So unfortunately, Dr. Thomas has been navigating a death in her family, so she wasn't able to be here tonight. She's been trying to prioritize her time back at Carrboro High, so condolences to her and her family. I'm not going to be as eloquent as she would have been, but she did give me notes to speak on. So one thing is just, throughout the last 2 years as we've been working through the block schedule, every single teacher from Carrboro High School continually came back to the flex period and wanted to make sure that was something that was continued daily, and it wasn't something that we were trying to go away from. So every single time, every single person from the school, that was a piece of, and also our students were adamant as we're looking at the flex of making sure that it was daily and that they had some choice in what that looked like. They also understood that choice may not be choice every single day, but some choice in that. So some notes from Dr. Thomas, because they're a school that has had flex for the last few years, and they're really looking forward to expanding it to a daily flex next year. So they've been working with their team to try to figure out, what does this look like? What is the future of their JAG block, which is their real time and their flex time, or real talk and flex time during next school year. So they've been looking at different schedules, going to our neighboring district, help them see a couple different options that they could look at. But one of the things that they're really trying to prioritize in this upcoming year, which isn't always able to happen on a monthly basis, is giving PLC time during some of that flex and being able to protect a given time. So a Math 3 class, their teachers will be able to meet during a set amount of time once a month. Where it might be, other times where they don't meet, or they're doing something on a Google Doc, or they're meeting after school, being able to navigate that within the block as well, or within Flex as well. So they've also talked about, how they, each group identified key priorities through their students group that they looked at. And for students, their top three, themes that emerged were student choice, wellness, and teacher choice. So they want to make sure that that is something that they continue to look at as they're moving into Flex next year. While the plan isn't necessarily finalized next year, it's still in development. Feedback from staff and leadership will play a central role in shaping the structure. They aim to ensure that their school priorities are reflected in the final schedule as well. And then also just knowing that each of our schools are going to have different variations of Flex. But when I come back and talk again, we'll talk a little bit about what things we're going to put in place this summer. But every school has its own identity, so we're really looking to garner a lot of feedback from Carrboro High School, who's been on this journey for the last couple of years, and I know that our other principals have been picking her brain on what could work in future years. So I will hand it over to Dr. Dixon.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Let's see if I can utilize this. Here we go. At Phoenix Academy High School, I'm proud to say that we've been around the block for a while now. This is 3 years that we've been on the block at Phoenix Academy, and I'm proud of what we've seen as a result of that. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that tonight. Again, we are no strangers to the 4x4 model. We've been operating on it, like I said, for the past 3 years. And what I'll say about that is our students and staff enjoy life on the block. I think some things were mentioned earlier, some positive things at other schools as a result of what Mr. Casey saw. I can say that we see the same things at Phoenix. I've spoke here to the flex time. I think being able to personalize that time is really, really important. We were able to really build relationships, I think, on a different level this year. When I look at our SCL data from Panorama, I think the way that students are feeling at Phoenix Academy has a lot to do with what we have seen in our flex time this year. If you can imagine a teacher taking the time to work with a student to teach them that they're not only an expert in social studies, but they're also an expert gardener. Or if you would, sometimes even the principal at Phoenix Academy has been known to work with kids and play guitar with them or play music at school. We have another teacher who, again, is known as a social studies teacher who's also a great seamstress. So they've been able to get into and work on their own clothes and mend their own materials at school. So the flex time has been a very valuable time. And another thing that's not mentioned here in the slide, but I was reminded today is an important thing to bring up, is that our students in the surveys told us that 7 classes throughout the course of the day is a lot of preps to weekly prepare for. We know we hear about teacher preps, but when you think about it from a student's perspective, a student has 7 classes, that's 7 homework, 7 projects, 7 classes worth of assignments throughout the course of the week that could equate to a lot of time. I think our students appreciate only having 4 classes at any time. And again, that's what the survey data that students gave us said in regard to 4x4 and their thoughts regarding what they wanted from a schedule. So I just think it's the stress of kids and the fact that a 4x4 block makes them feel a lot less stressed. There's a lot less there to have to manage. I know that the time piece is certainly something that is a concern for a lot of folks. But again, I think like most big blocks of time, you break that into smaller blocks of time. And as Mr. Casey mentioned, find those engaging things that students can be doing. What I'm excited about, we talk a lot about equity in our district, and I'm very excited that this is going to allow my students more equitable access to the coursework that's throughout our district. Phoenix students, as a result of having a small staff, have had access to very few classes and courses. Many of the courses that they have to take are Apex courses, which is like an online module system. So the fact that our students at Phoenix are now going to have access to all the great courses, and they're going on all around our district, is an exciting thing and the right thing to do. So I'm proud of us for that. Also, with the cross-enrollment options that we're looking at for next year, we've got a lot of kids already excited. They know what 2 classes they want to go take at other campuses. They know they want to take those courses because, again, we can't offer them at Phoenix. And I'm just excited that we are making these moves in what I think is a very, very much a right direction for our district, and certainly a right direction for Phoenix Academy students. So again, they're going to get access to those specialized, hands-on, interest-based electives. Mr. Casey alluded to this earlier, but being on the block allows you more time to get into real projects and really spend a lot of time in a lab or something of that nature. But my kids are now going to have access to these courses, be that AP level coursework, which right now they don't have access to, the firefighting tech, the EMT courses, the automotive courses I know are very popular ones and ones my students are interested in seeing for themselves. So again, just the access to those CTE pathways and college prep tracks that they have not had access to previously, again, is why I think this is a good thing and a move in the right direction for our whole district. Again, what does this lead to? A more personalized learning experience for all students, where I'm able to take courses that may lead to a certification or may lead again to a career interest, whereas before my students may not have had those options and may have just had to take whatever classes we had available, not necessarily the ones they were most interested in. So with that being said, again, our future is a promising one, I think, in regard to 4x4 block. The future at Phoenix is a promising one. I do see a future where, again, our students are no longer defined, as I say here, by the limits of a single school site, but instead are empowered by the collective offerings of our entire district and all of our high schools. This has given us that scheduling power to make this vision real, us deciding as a district to go to the 4x4 block. And again, that cross-enrollment just takes it a step further and, again, brings us closer to, again, excited and engaged students about the classes that they're taking in our Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools. I'm especially committed, again, to using this model, as I say here again, not just ensuring access or ensuring access and not just availability. It's great when things are available, but if students aren't accessing those things, that's kind of a moot point. So the fact that, again, we are making the moves that we have made to ensure that my students have access to these courses, and again, that all Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools students have access to many, many courses throughout our district, something I'm proud of us for, and I thank you for allowing me time to speak to this a little bit more tonight. Thank you. And with that, I'll hand it over to Ms. Atkins.
Thank you, Dr. Dixon.
Thank you.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'm also joined by Tim MacArthur, but I think I'm doing most of the talking. All right, so I'm the director of school counseling, Rebecca Atkins, and part of what school counselors do, of course, is academic advisement and supporting students in selecting appropriate coursework. Counselors also are a big part of just the physical labor of scheduling and creating schedules within our student information system. And as we all know, we are moving to a new student information system at the same time as moving to a new block, which is its own unique challenge that we are ready to rise to. So here is the registration timeline that I think I showed you back in January. And if we are looking at a We Are Here map, we are now in the last bullet. We made it. So at this point, all of our students have selected their courses. Our high schools have begun building their master schedules, and we've started putting students into classes on the back end. Power School sort of helps you do that somewhat automatically, but it takes human eyes to go back through and make sure that it's both correct and appropriate. For example, you wouldn't want to have a student scheduled for 4 core classes in one semester and 4 electives in the next semester. Power School doesn't really have a great way to do that automatically. It takes human eyes. So at this point, we know in our transition to Infinite Campus, the better we have things set up in Power School, the better off we'll be for when we start using a new system, because no matter what, we don't know how to use it. Yet. So at this point, we're reviewing and revising schedules starting already, but that will continue throughout the summer as we move into Infinite Campus, and we look and see, make sure those schedules have loaded correctly and beautifully into our new system, and tweak and make any changes that come up as staffing changes, new students enroll, etc. To support our counselors, we've had 2 sessions with a neighboring school district central office administrator who's we've invited to come in. She has worked in high school her full career and has been in 4x4 her whole career, plus they are a phase 1 Infinite Campus, so she kind of brought the lens of both things. So on February 17th and May 6th, we had a guest speaker speak with all of our counselors to go through best practices and then troubleshooting. We also had a high school collaborative scheduling meeting with principals, APs, counselors on a teacher work day to kind of talk about what are you guys doing, what is cross enrollment going to look like. Just having everybody in the same room makes that easier than 45,000 emails going around. And then our counselors also meet monthly in our PLCs, and we make sure to leave time in every PLC to talk about just the nuts and bolts of any barriers people are coming up against, questions they have. Hey, how are you guys handling this? How are you guys handling that? So that we can make sure everyone has that community support of their colleagues. Our next steps are happening right now. We're already starting to pull data. Dr. Bales and Dr. Buckram have been looking at schedule builds, making sure they're making sense, asking questions, having a different set of eyes. Not that our high schools can't do it, of course they can, but having all of us working together, we want to be in the best place we can for our transition. We're communicating with schools. Tim and I, our offices are next to each other, and we are constantly going back and forth. Like, hey, have you thought about this? What are we going to do about that? So we're really in this stage of making sure that we're thinking through things that aren't on a list anywhere. And then we're also talking about what are the backups we need to have from Power School as we move into Infinite Campus. I'm sure it will go fine. It went fine for phase 1, but you have that worry, right? So what kind of things do we want to pull so we have them sitting somewhere just in case?
All right, so if we remember 364 days ago, like we literally were sitting here. We were probably just starting our presentation, and my watch did not tell me to stand up for 3 hours as we were standing here. So in the last 364 days, I feel like there's a lot of work that's been done. There's a lot of work that still has to be done. We have some of that we're still planning. Everything that we talked about at this time last year, some things have shifted, some things have went on perfectly. There's some different ideas, just like Rebecca said, every day there's something new. So, hey, we should try this, let's do this, getting feedback from students, from teachers. So I'm excited about the work that our team has done. I'm excited about the work that we'll continue to do as we move forward. As we look over the summer, like Rebecca said, we're finalizing schedules. Just so our community knows, we were able to secure some extra duty contracts for our counselors to be able to work over the summer. So I know that was a worry that we've had before. We were able to secure funding for that. I know they are all very happy with that as well. And then really just making that transition to Infinite Campus. Over the summer, we've talked about creating a committee for our flex so that we can learn from each other. One of the main things I think that we really have learned is how powerful we can be when we work together. Like, not that our high school principals didn't work together before, but this has made them have to work together all the time. They get to come to board meetings, they get to do presentations, they get to meet together. So all of those things have allowed them to really think and build things together. And that has been really cool and unique to see. So as we have that committee over the summer, really be able to decide on some flexible stability. I know that's been some worry of some of our staff members of like, well, what is flex? Is it just gonna be wild? Is it gonna be whatever? Providing some of that flexibility so we know what the schedule looks like on like a monthly basis, but knowing that it's still going to be flexible for our students, flexible for our teachers. Also knowing that in those first couple of weeks, like we're not going to just jump into a flex and say, all right, go where you want to go. We got to build that muscle memory for our teachers, for our students. And there's lots of stuff at the beginning of a school year that having that extra 40 minutes every day would be helpful of like, let's get this. in place. Let's do this. Let's talk about this. So that will happen as we move forward. Do I anticipate that how flex looks on day one is going to look different than the middle of the year and the end of the year? Absolutely. I think as we move forward, just like Mr. Casey said, even just doing it for a couple days, I know there's feedback of like, okay, this wasn't as bad as it was. Here's something we thought was going to work really well, and we might need to adjust a little bit. We're willing to do all of those things. And then professional development over the summer, working with our directors, school admin coaches, to create some just-in-time PD. So not something that's going to take an hour for someone to get, but something like, okay, I'm thinking about this. What's a video or something I can watch for 5 minutes that's going to give me the gist of what that entails? Our teachers are asking for, I need that little bit, just to kind of refresh me on where I'm at. They've also asked that we re-offer the same sessions that we offered this year. When they're actually in the class and doing it, they have a better understanding of what this might actually look like. And then again, continuing to gather feedback and where we may land. And then again, continuing branching minds. We've had a lot of teachers that have accessed that asynchronous options. And what we've noticed is if you are a teacher that's taking advantage of that, you took advantage of all of it. So either you took advantage of all of it or none of it. So continue to make sure that that is out there and available for our teachers, and offering as much as they may need or not need. And as they get into the process next year, I think they'll understand a little bit more what it looks and feels like, and we'll be able to continue to navigate. So from there, I will open it up for questions.
Thank you for the presentation. The feedback from the students, especially the ones who did the experiment that Mr. Casey did, they were certainly encouraging. One kind of technical question that I had was about transportation. So obviously we were touting the cross-enrollment as a benefit, and I know that that was a concern that had been expressed by a lot of people. Do we have a plan in place for getting kids from one school to the other, or is it all going to be done via Zoom? I mean, I worry a little bit about Zoom because it's often hard to hear. It's just, that's not ideal.
Yeah, so I mean, we're still working with Durham Tech and having different conversations with them on what are some different funding sources that they may be able to utilize. I have a meeting with our city transportation to figure out, can we alter some bus routes to make, a little easier? Because in all honesty, like, they need that transportation for the most part. We provide it if you're going to do half the day. If it's that one class at the end of the day and we provide that route, it won't be that difficult. And I know that our city transportation, when I emailed them, they were quick to respond. So I'm excited to see, once we can finally get that meeting up and going, what we can do with that moving forward. So it's still things that we're continuing to look at. It's also the fact that we have to have the students actually cross-enrolled for that one period. And it's kind of that you need to have the students before we can say that we have the need. If we're going to have multiple buses, I don't want to have multiple buses and 12 kids. So I think over the next 3 to 5 years, as we continue to grow the programming, we'll have more of that cross enrollment. And then with Durham Tech, I don't remember, and Mr. Casey may be able to give a better number on this, but I know there's multiple courses that instead of being taught like on campus at Durham or online, the teachers are actually coming on campus to teach the courses there.
Dr. Bells, has there been any conversation about the ability to have Durham Tech do any teaching for our district in their space at the Drakeford? I know I was speaking with an administrator at Durham Tech a few weeks back, and she was telling me that at that time, those spaces were pretty much going to be for continuing education. But I also know that they have the CNA lab there. That's the continuing education version. But do you know if they're going to be looking at possibly changing it to the curriculum side for credit to see if maybe that would be a possibility for our students, since it's set up right in our backyard and it's completely identical to the one except smaller scale, but it's a lovely, lovely space for the CNA program.
Yeah, no, they're open to whatever partnerships we can have in our community, and we've even talked about, do we utilize the public library and some of their spaces that they have there? Again, do we have the students that are wanting to take those courses to be able to do it? They've been extremely flexible with us. They want this to work just as much as we do. So I'm really excited to see, as we're moving forward, I told them, like, think big, and then, I want to be able to say in 3 to 5 years, like, here's all of the things that we've done. So, yes, just not yet.
Yes, and.
Yes, and thank you. Yes.
And I mean, I just want to reiterate something Dr. Bales talked about. I mean, they are wonderful partners, but I think a lot of the heavy lift is going to be on us. Like, if we can bring the students, they are going to bring the programming, and we've heard that from the highest levels of their administration.
Yeah, Barb.
Thank you. Oh,
I just
Go
want
ahead.
to say that Durham Tech has been coming to us with ideas. We actually are piloting a coding class with 5 people. I just want to reiterate, but follow up on Dr. Thomas. Durham Tech has been coming to us with ideas, and they have things like they came to us and said that they had a coding class they wanted to try to pilot. And so we have 5 kids in it, wanted to see how it would work, and, want to build on that. So, we have a very strong relationship with Ariel Beeman, who comes to us Thursdays and Fridays from Durham Tech. And if you ever come on a Thursday and Friday in the Commons, she's sitting there with all different kids working out plans. But it's not just us coming to them. They're coming to us, and we are open to anything they want to bring to us, because I know a lot of their programming and their classes are kind of more of what kids are looking into these days. So.
And I can add to that, too. Our automotive classes, we, in years past, have had to pay an additional stipend to our automotive teacher to teach an additional class or 2 every year. And they were able to actually get certification so that they can have the Durham Tech class taught at Chapel Hill High by the instructor, and they're actually paying for it. So we're kind of not having to pay that bill anymore. You're welcome, Jonathan. So that was, that's a partnership that we've been working on, and those are some of the things that we want to continue to look at. So when we talked about pathways and we talked about the gifted plan, like, this is a way for us to, we have our pathways here, but how do we expand them just a little bit more over here? So we're offering multiple pathways. So it's not like here's the one you can take, but here's 3 or 4. But they are extremely interested, Durham Tech, in making sure that, like, we have completers. It's not that you're just coming and taking a couple of courses. Like, you're leaving with a certificate. You're leaving with something. So I'm excited to see, in a couple of years and next year, the numbers that we can bring back and say, like, here are the number of completers that we've had. We talk about that in our CTE courses, but being able to bring additional numbers about our partnership with Durham Tech.
Thank you. Barb, you, and then Riza.
I guess thinking back over the meetings we've had to discuss the block schedule in the past, two of the points of kind of resistance, I guess, from people who didn't like it. One was about how we were going to address taking the AP tests. And so I guess I'd just like to hear an update on either the PD that's been going on or just anything you can share about, like, even just a vibe check on how AP teachers are feeling. And that's one. And then the second is another thing that I feel like I kind of know the answer to this, but I think it's worth saying. There was people were like, oh, we're going to lose 380 minutes of instruction time, or some people had calculated this number, and it's like, but it seems so obvious to me that even if you have a little less time in a seat, like, the quality of the time that you're in there just seems so much higher. But I guess just anything you'd like to share about those 2 points would be super helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, I would say Chapel High, and when we went to our neighboring district about flex, AP came up a lot because they actually sent some of their teachers. And to just hear from other teachers of, like, I don't know why y'all are worried about it. It works out. It's going to be okay. And then asking them too, like, okay, what are some things that you put in place? And it is that strategic, like, in the last month of April, during their flex time, very specific, like, okay, on Mondays, it's going to be like these 3 AP courses. Every Monday you're going to come in. We're going to, review, get ready for the AP exam. It's not, and I just also want to make sure our community knows that that's not something that says that if you take an AP course, you need to go into review every Monday throughout the entire year. They talked about, when you get back from spring break, that's kind of the mindset shift of, okay, we've got a month or so. I will say on our end too, and you always talk about what can the board do, continue to advocate that we have multiple windows for the AP exam. When we're looking at calendars, I know if we were able to scooch the first semester up just a little bit and end right at winter break, that would, honestly, when you talk to teachers and they got past some of the things, they're like, if we could just do that, like, that would help. So we're trying to figure out ways to best navigate that. And I think after the first year and how they feel, we'll get a better understanding of what the feel is and what the need is. And the second question was around, so I also want to make sure our community is very clear that like flex time isn't just run around and be free and we're not doing anything. Flex time is a time to actually like get what you need. I could be a student that is extremely talented in my math class, but I really struggle in my English class. And I might get done with my math work and just sit there for 45 minutes because I'm done. If I had a little bit of that time that I could devote back to my English class, and that's honestly what we're doing, is if you take a little bit of time, we're honestly giving it back to the student to say, like, what do you need? Do you need some extra support? Do you need some SEL time? When we look at the scope of a lesson, and we're not telling teachers to go and teach 2 lessons in one day. But in reality, if we took 2 lessons, there's a warm-up, there's an exit ticket. I would really hope that on a block schedule, you're not doing that twice. You're taking that away. And honestly, if you don't do 2 warm-ups, you don't do 2 exit tickets, that's your time that is lost in that time frame. And as Mr. Casey was able to, with his students, just being able to go in depth into a conversation is really helpful. Now, that means that we've got to provide resources and professional development to make sure teachers are doing that and not just lecturing the entire time. But there's many places that we're just maximizing the time, and we're giving some of that time back to students to get what they need.
Well, Dr. Bales, you hit on my question. How are the staff being supported in this transition? Not necessarily professional development, right? Like, I'm assuming all of our educators know how to teach, right? Right, like it's like first base assumption. But it is a mind shift, right? I'm not going to knock or throw any staff under the bus, but if they've been teaching the same class for 20 years, I'm certain they just dust off the same lesson plan every year. And now it's different, right? You're going from 45 minutes to 45, 50 minutes to 80. So now you've got to like reorg that a little bit. And I hope we're not lecturing to our kids for 45 to 50 minutes anyway, but for those who are, we can't lecture to them for 80 minutes, right? That's painful for anybody. So how are we supporting staff with like restructuring their lesson plans, giving them time to do that, right? And then that's the first question. And then the feedback from the staff, because what I don't want is staff come to talk to me or any of the 7 of us. I can't fix anything for them, right? I mean, I might try, but I can't fix anything. The fixing happens with you all, right? It happens with their administration. It happens with you and your team, Dr. Bales. And so I want to make sure that feedback loop isn't just at one school or this school, but across the district, you guys are gathering it, because maybe some staff at one school feel more comfortable about giving the feedback, but that's the same issue going on at another school. They just don't want to talk about it. They don't want to say anything to that administrator, because then that's not good. So I think those are my 2 concerns, because I want to make sure people are going to the right places where change can happen. While we stay ahead of it, because at the end of the day, it's going to impact the kids. And so I want adult issues to move out of the way of kids, so that they are going to be learning regardless of what schedule they're on.
Can I just weigh in before Dr. Bales? I just want to remind the board and also our community that we're developing a comprehensive evaluation plan. So when you mention feedback loops such as student surveys, staff surveys, and identifying the needs that we have as a district over time, and I'm not just talking about next year, but really over the next 3 or 4 years as we kind of do deep implementation. Diane Vilwalk and I have been working pretty hard on kind of what that will begin to look like. There are some community members who've expressed interest in serving on that committee as well that we've been in contact with. And you'll hear more about the evaluation piece, the feedback loops that we're going to create from the very beginning, starting in the fall as a board. You'll hear about that in the fall. So that's not on our next steps for the summer, but almost immediately when we come back, the board will hear and see the plan that we're putting in place for the feedback loop.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just say, like, in terms of our curriculum and the scope and sequencing and all of that, like, that work has been done by our teams and by teachers, within the last year. So teachers don't have to go back and, dust off their lesson plans and redo it all. Like, we have that in terms of, like, here's the pace in that, moves this to this part of the year, moves this over here, and it maps out the entire year. So for our teachers, I'll just remind them, like, look at the pacing guides, and, we have instructional planning teams where, every year, regardless if we're doing a block or not, they give feedback on, like, what's working, what's not. So that piece. And I will say, in terms of the feedback piece, like, I'm in schools a lot, and I will tell you, teachers are very willing to talk and give me some feedback. And, I know, like, that, as we move forward, it's just a continual, if they feel like, yes, you're actually listening to it. And that, feedback doesn't mean like everything's going to go back and change, but okay, what does that look and feel like? And I try to remind our teachers, like, our grading practices. Like, we had a couple of years where we did some modifications to grading practices based on teacher feedback, based on student feedback, parent feedback. That's the same kind of rotation that I want to get into, is like, this is the baseline year, and trying to continue to get feedback. I talk with our principals all the time who do get that feedback, because they're in those classrooms a little more often. I've talked with my team next year, like, when we do, transition into flex, like, we're going to block off the first month, and we're going to be in the buildings to look and see and feel what it actually looks like. What does flex look like? What can we support with? I anticipate that a lot of it's just going to be us in the buildings next year, getting that feedback, on day 1, day 20, day 98, to see, like, what things are they feel, what's stress, what's not stressful. And we're in all of the schools, so we can kind of get a pulse of where that all is. But, our principals, like I said, they do a great job of getting that feedback and they come together all the time. I'm glad I'm not in their group chat, because I know that, that comes up a lot. But just continue to build that team, and so that our teachers know, any of us are open to the feedback. And we've got so many different avenues for them to do so. If they want to call, if they want me to pop over. We've talked too about popping into PLCs a lot more next year, so that we can get feedback directly from, our English 2 teachers say this, and kind of navigate that piece.
All right. Well, we appreciate that. Dr. Bales, thank you. And to the principals that were here tonight, we appreciate hearing directly from you, and Ms. Atkins, on behalf of the counselors. It's reassuring to hear all the activity that's going on, and it's actually quite overwhelming, the amount of work and effort, and believe me, it's appreciated. And I can say that on behalf of everybody. So thank you.
Thank you.